We'll start with the Saturday afternoon game. I mentioned John Breach, the Cincinnati Bengals, winless in the playoffs since 1991. They have gotten the best possible draw imaginable. They get the warm weather Raiders and Derek Carr. A really cool story, to be honest. Headed to Cincinnati. This line opened at 6. It has dropped down to 5. We are picking it at 5.5. Raiders at the Bengals. Bengals minus 5.5. Over under 49. Pete, I know that you have been doing office hours, making calls, grinding on tape, and looking at the previous matchup between these two teams. What did you see?
The Raiders' defensive line dominated them. They really did. And that score isn't indicative of how much they dominated them. They blitzed twice in the game, and they pressured them on, I think, 20-something% of the snaps. They got after them, and the tape showed it. Now they have Isaiah Prince playing at right tackle with Reef out, and that's even more of a problem. So I think it's going to be imperative that Cincinnati runs the football, which I think they will do. I think they're going to try and control clock. On the flip side, the Bengals defensive line can get after the quarterback too, particularly off that right side, which is terrible. So look for a big day from Hubbard, I think, maybe more so than Hendrickson. And I just think this is a game that's going to be a lower scoring game than people think. And I'm going to take the points because I think there's going to be a turnover or two to keep the Raiders within the number. So I think the Bengals win the game and move on, but I think the Raiders hang around in this one.
The Bengals offense had 1,050 yards in their last 2 competitive games. That's more than Vegas had in any 3-game stretch over the last 6 weeks. That Vegas offense averaged 16 points in 5 games prior to Sunday. That's not going to cut it against Cincy if that's what they're scoring. The defense gave up at least 30 points 5 times in the second half of the season. Their remarkable run to make the postseason, that involved edging out several limited offenses, and the Bengals definitely do not have a limited offense. I know that the matchups probably favor the Raiders, considering they don't need to blitz here, and the defense did well against Cincy in the first game, despite the score, like you said. I think the Bengals controlled that game regardless. They were going to win that game. They just weren't going to win it by a blowout, and that's what the final score indicated. This line is coming down. I was leaning toward the Bengals. I was going to make the Bengals the best bet. Since it's coming down, the sharps seem to be on the Raiders. I'm just making it a lean on the Bengals. If it gets any lower, I see some 4.5s out there, then I would be looking to play the Bengals at 4.5.
Yeah, I like the Bengals here. And I get it. The Raiders kept it close before. Max Crosby, incredible game against Storm Norton. I mean, just a bullying of Norton over there on the right side against the Chargers. And if he does that against the Bengals, it will make life tough for Joe Burrow. However, I tend to think that the Bengals have a pretty massive advantage when it comes to the weather here. I mean, Derek Carr maybe has covered or won his last 2 starts, but generally, like, he is not good in cold weather. I mean, he just doesn't play in cold weather. He went to Fresno State from California, plays for the Raiders, doesn't see a lot of cold weather. It's going to be really cold, potential snow, nasty weather in Cincinnati. And Joe Burrow's from Ohio. He's used to this. He is a cold weather. He's fine with cold weather. And more importantly, he freaking loves big games. This guy just dominates when it's clutch time. He had 950 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 0 picks, 2 rushing touchdowns in 2 college football playoff games. I know it's not the same as an NFL playoff game, but Derek Carr's new to this too. So I can't, I'm not worried particularly about how the pressure might affect Joe Burrow. I think it's more likely to affect Derek Carr. And, as RJ said, they haven't, no snow anymore in the forecast. Thank you, Mel, in the YouTube chat. Just cold. Still cold Cincinnati in middle of January. Not ideal for Derek Carr. I'm going to make the Bengals the best bet here. I'm tempted. I know you got that up, Debo. What is the go to the home tab, please, if you will, and just see what the
27.5, I believe.
27.5 for the Bengals.
Yeah, I was looking at it earlier for props. When I put my props article in for Sportsline, I said Evan McPherson over 2.5 extra points, because if they're going to get to 27, 28 points, you got to figure he's making 3 extra points.
Yeah, so 27.5 total points. That's a lot. You're basically asking, are you going to score 4 touchdowns or not? What's the total? What's the touchdown total there? Scroll down just a touch. Huh, that's interesting. 3.5 touchdowns over plus 145 versus over 27.5 points plus 100.
Yeah, because you can get to 27 with the field goals, so it's 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals. And that's kind of, I think since that 27.5 shaded to the under, that's kind of what people were thinking right now, 27.
Yeah. That checks out. All right, yes. Forget that. I'm just going to take the Bengals -5.5 or 5, whatever. I get that the line movement is definitely scary. Don't care. I'm backing Joe Burrow as often as I can in these big spots. I got a ton of Joe Burrow exposure in underdog on best ball playoff stuff too. I just think we're going to get just an incredible performance from Burrow. Pete, I mean, Pete said it. Yeah, Pete predicted the Super Bowl. I just think we get a big performance from Burrow. That's all. And I want to back
Speaking of line movement, I didn't put in any best bets for this game. I was going to put in Darren Waller over 59.5 receiving yards. It ticked down to 58.5. So apparently the people that are in on this early, who I trust more than myself, are on the under on that. So I didn't want to put it in as the best bet. He only had 2 receptions in his return last week. He was targeted 9 times, and the Bengals allowed the 5th most receiving yards to tight ends in the league. And I think in the playoffs, you want to lean on your best weapon, and he's their best weapon. So I just think he's going to get a ton of targets. If he's getting double-digit targets, he feels like he's going to get to 60 yards. So I almost put that in as a best bet, but because it started moving the other way on me, I decided to just make it a lean.
You don't get scared of that sharp movement, RJ. There is I want to see what is the number of carries for these guys. Ooh, Josh Jacobs. Mixon is 19.5. Jacobs is 16.5. I'm kind of intrigued by Josh Jacobs over rushing attempts. I think the Raiders could very well try to lean on him to take the pressure off of Derek Carr. I think that's jumped up a little bit. Might have been 15.5 before. So tempted by total over rushing attempts for Josh Jacobs. 85.5 rush receiving yards, probably too much.
What's Mixon there? What's Mixon's rushing total number?
76.5.
70.
Oh, he's going over that. He's going over that.
Yeah. I like that.
19.5. I believe he's only been 20 carries like 3 times this year and only twice since week 2. So that would seem like a little bit of a high number to me. I like his receiving yards number. You figure the coverage will focus on taking away Chase because he's been so dominant the last few weeks. But Mixon has, been kind of unlocked as a receiver. He had his most targets and receptions in that last game against the Chiefs before they sat everyone. And then he had his most receiving yards the week before against the Ravens. So it just seems like he's going to be involved more. And the number I believe is only like 18.5 on receiving yards. So if that continues, he should get to 20 yards, I think.
Yeah, and that's interesting too because all season long, Mixon has not been used as a receiver. They've had Samaje Perine in there on third downs and in passing situations. To your point, RJ, I wonder if the last 2 weeks, as they when it's time to get, do you want to make the playoffs? What do? You lean on Joe Mixon, use him as a receiver. You sort of wonder if that usage with Samaje Perine might drop off once they get to the playoffs. So they're like, you know what? We're in the postseason. We are going all in on Joe Mixon instead of trying to rotate Samaje Perine in there. If that is the case, then yeah, the receiving yards for Mixon at 18.5 looks real good, as does, they don't have receptions for him though. Okay. Anyway, I like that receiving yards too. All right, let's move on.